I first noticed the car because it was too patient. The drive home from work was dull in a way that usually let my mind drift. Familiar streets, predictable lights, the soft hum of the engine filling the space between thoughts. That night, rain slicked the asphalt into a dull mirror, street lights stretching into long amber streaks across the road. I stopped at the first red light. The car behind me stopped too. That alone meant nothing. But when the light changed, it didn't surge forward like most drivers did. It eased ahead at exactly the same pace I did, leaving the same careful distance between us. Not tailgating, not lagging, just waiting. I checked my mirrors. Dark sedan, headlights low, no distinguishing marks. The kind of car that blends into traffic by design. At the next light, I changed lanes at the last second. The sedan changed lanes with me. I told myself it was coincidence. Commute patterns overlap. People live near each other. The rational explanations came easily, and I let them soothe me as I turned onto my usual route. A stretch of road that narrowed and dimmed as it wound through older neighborhoods. The sedan followed. The rain softened into a steady whisper, each drop tapping gently against the windshield. I turned the radio down, listening to the sound of the tires on wet pavement. The sedan's headlights stayed steady in my rearview mirror, neither brightening nor dimming. At a four-way stop, I hesitated. The sedan did not inch forward. We waited together, suspended in the soft hush of rain. I went. It went. By the third stop, unease crept in. I slowed slightly between lights, then sped up, testing the distance. The sedan adjusted seamlessly, as if my speed were being mirrored rather than followed. When I braked early, it did too. No squeal, no delay. It felt less like being chased, and more like being accompanied. That thought unsettled me more than fear would have. I turned off my route. The detour led through a residential area I'd only passed through a handful of times. Narrow streets, parked cars lining both sides, trees arching overhead, their branches dripping rain. The sedan followed every turn. I made 3 in quick succession, heart beating louder with each one. Still there, always there. At the next stop sign, I rolled to a complete stop and waited. So did the sedan. I waited longer. The sedan waited longer. Neither of us moved. The rain filled the silence, soft and endless. Finally, I went. The sedan followed. My hands were damp on the steering wheel now, though the car was warm. I considered calling someone, anyone, but the thought of explaining felt absurd, fragile. "There's a car behind me" sounded foolish, paranoid. Instead, I drove. I focused on the road, on the feel of the car responding to my movements, on the familiar landmarks sliding past. Grocery store, closed gas station, the old playground with rusted swings creaking softly in the wind. The sedan never wavered. At the last stoplight before my street, I decided to confront it. I slowed to a stop and put the car in park. The sedan stopped behind me. I turned around fully in my seat and looked through the rear window. The headlights dimmed slightly. A courtesy. I couldn't see the driver. The rain distorted the windshield into a sheet of shifting glass, blurring any detail beyond the light itself. Still, I had the distinct impression of being looked at, not stared at, not scrutinized. Acknowledged. The light turned green. I didn't move. Neither did the sedan. We sat there holding up the empty intersection, the rain continuing its patient fall. After a few seconds, a car approached from the cross street, slowed, then turned away. The sedan's engine idled steadily, waiting. I shifted back into drive and turned onto my street. The sedan followed, My house came into view, porch light glowing softly, the familiar shape of home, offering a thin thread of comfort. I pulled into the driveway and cut the engine. The sedan stopped across the street. Its engine turned off. The headlights stayed on. I sat there longer than I meant to, listening to the ticking of my cooling engine, watching the light wash over my front yard. The sedan did not move. The rain softened, becoming a fine mist. I got out of the car. The sedan's headlights remained fixed, steady and unblinking. I walked to my front door. Keys clutched tightly. Every cent stretched thin. When I reached the door, I turned back. The sedan was still there, waiting. Inside, the house felt too quiet. I locked the door, then the deadbolt. I turned off the lights and stood by the window, peering through the curtains. The sedan hadn't moved. Minutes passed. Then slowly, the headlights turned off. Darkness claimed the street. The sedan remained. I slept badly that night, waking often to the sound of rain tapping at the windows. The image of those headlights burned into the back of my eyes. When morning came, the street was empty. No sign of the sedan. No tire tracks. No evidence it had ever been there. I told myself it was over. I told myself it was nothing. The next evening, I left work late. The rain had returned. At the first stoplight, I felt a familiar presence settle behind me before I even checked the mirror. The dark sedan waited, patient as ever, as if it knew exactly where I was going, and had all the time in the world to get there with me. I run at night because the world feels unfinished then. The street's empty early in my neighborhood, the kind of quiet that doesn't demand attention but rewards it. No traffic. No conversations drifting from open windows. Just the soft repetition of my own footsteps and the measured rise and fall of my breath. It helps me sleep. That night, the air was cool enough to sting, the sky low and dark, holding back rain. I took my usual route, down the long stretch of road by the river, where the street lights thin out and the sidewalk narrows into something more like a suggestion. I settled into my pace. That was when I heard the other footsteps. They were faint at first, nearly swallowed by my own stride. A soft echo, too close to be coincidence, too steady to ignore. I slowed instinctively, pretending to adjust my headphones even though nothing was playing. The footsteps slowed too. I stopped. They stopped. Silence fell so abruptly, it rang in my ears. I waited, breath shallow, heart ticking loud enough that I was sure it could be heard from behind me. Nothing. I laughed under my breath and started running again. The footsteps resumed immediately. I told myself it was another runner. Someone keeping pace, matching stride. It happens sometimes, especially on popular routes. But this stretch of road wasn't popular, not at night. It ran parallel to the river, dark water hidden beyond a line of trees, the air thick with damp earth and rot. I glanced over my shoulder. The sidewalk behind me was empty. The streetlights carved the road into pale islands of visibility, and between them, the darkness pulled thick and unmoving. No runner, no silhouette, just my own shadow stretching long and thin across the pavement. The footsteps continued, perfectly synchronized. I picked up speed. So did they, not closer, not farther, just there. I focused on my breathing, tried to drown out the sound behind me. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The rhythm steadied my nerves, even as something cold slid into my stomach. In, out. Behind me, the footsteps fell into the same cadence. By the time I reached the river bend, My legs burned and my mouth tasted like copper. The footsteps had grown clearer, no longer an echo, but a presence. I could hear the subtle differences now. The softer impact, the careful placement of weight. Whoever it was wasn't tired. I slowed to a jog. They slowed too. I stopped completely. The footsteps halted mid-stride, frozen so abruptly it felt like a held breath. I turned around. Nothing. The sidewalk was bare, damp with evening dew, shining faintly under the streetlight. No movement, no sound, except the river. I stood there for a long moment, waiting for my pulse to slow. Then I noticed the footprints. They were fresh, darker than the surrounding pavement, as if pressed into something just barely wet. They began a few steps behind, where I'd stopped, and ended exactly where I stood. They were barefoot, longer than mine, and they faced inward, toward me. I didn't run after that. I walked home carefully, every step deliberate, listening for the sound to return. It didn't. Not that night. I checked over my shoulder every few seconds, expecting to see something slip between the streetlights. Nothing followed. I slept poorly. The next evening, I debated skipping my run. I told myself it was paranoia, adrenaline making patterns where there were none. I needed routine, normalcy, proof that nothing had changed. So I went out again. Same route, same time. The footsteps returned within minutes, closer this time. I tried to speak. Hello? My voice sounded thin in the open air, barely reaching past my own ears. The footsteps didn't respond. They simply adjusted, matching the cadence of my stride so perfectly, it felt like walking beside my own echo. I slowed. They slowed. I stopped. They stopped. Always just behind me, never ahead. Over the next week, the presence became familiar. Unwelcome, but consistent. It never rushed me, never tried to pass. It seemed content to remain exactly where it was, as if that distance mattered. I began to dread the moment it appeared, and the nights it didn't. Because on the nights I ran and heard nothing, the silence felt wrong, exposed, as if something else had taken its place. The night it finally overtook me, there was no warning, no change in sound, no rush of air. Just a sudden, unmistakable sensation of someone stepping into my space. I stopped. The footsteps didn't. They moved forward, past me. I turned, heart hammering. The shape ahead of me was barely visible, a darker distortion in the air, like heat rising off asphalt. It walked with the same careful stride I'd heard for weeks, moving away from me down the path. Bare feet slapped softly against the pavement. I realized then that it wasn't following me. It had been learning. I didn't run after it. I couldn't. I watched as it reached the edge of the streetlight and stepped into darkness, its outline dissolving into the night. The footsteps faded. The silence that followed felt expectant, as if waiting for me to move. I don't run that route anymore. Sometimes late at night, I lie awake and listen to my own breathing in the dark. Occasionally, just before sleep takes me, I hear it. Soft, patient footsteps falling into rhythm beside my bed. Never closer, never farther. Just there, keeping pace, making sure I remember how to move. I first noticed him on a Tuesday. That detail matters to me now, because Tuesdays were ordinary, predictable in a way that made everything else feel safe. Same shift end time, same walk home, same streets softened by dusk, and the low hum of traffic settling into evening. I took the long route on purpose. 15 minutes instead of 10. Past the closed bakery with the warm smell still clinging to its bricks. Past the row of narrow houses where lights clicked on one by one like a slow countdown. It helped me decompress. Let the day loosen its grip. That was when I became aware of footsteps behind me. Not loud, not hurried, just present. I didn't turn around right away. City sidewalks collect sounds. Other walkers, dogs, distant conversations. But these steps were too consistent. Each one landed a breath after mine, like an echo that had learned patience. I slowed slightly. So did the footsteps. I told myself it was nothing. Someone going the same way, same pace, same luck of timing. I reached the corner and turned left. The footsteps turned with me. The second night I noticed him. Not clearly, not at first. Just a shape in my peripheral vision when I glanced into a shop window. Tall, dark coat, hands at his sides. He wasn't close enough to feel threatening, but he wasn't far enough to forget about either. When I stopped to check my phone, pretending to read a message, he stopped too. I waited. He waited. The air between us stretched thin, delicate, like a held breath. When I started walking again, he followed. Always the same distance. Always quiet. By Friday, I had mapped my route down to instinct. I knew which cracks to step over, which streetlight flickered, where the pavement dipped just enough to catch rainwater. I also knew when to expect him. 3 minutes after leaving work. Every night. Never early. Never late. I tried to get a better look at his face once, slowing just enough to glimpse his reflection in a darkened car window. The angle warped him, elongated his features, smoothed them into something indistinct. It struck me then that he didn't look like someone walking home. He looked like someone walking with me. I changed my route the following Monday. I turned right instead of left. Cut through a residential block I'd never used before, where the houses were closer together and the trees leaned low over the sidewalk. My heart beat faster, not from fear, I told myself, but from the thrill of breaking routine. For a moment, the street behind me was empty. I let myself relax. Then I reached the end of the block. He was already there, standing beneath a streetlight, exactly where I would have passed if I'd kept my old route. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't look anything at all. He simply turned and began walking. I followed. That night, I dreamed of walking. Endless pavement. Endless dusk. My footsteps soft and careful, as if I were afraid to wake something. Behind me, always behind me, another set of steps followed at the same pace. I woke with my legs aching, as if I'd walked all night. I started paying attention to details. He never checked his phone, never adjusted his clothing, never cleared his throat or scuffed his shoe. His gait didn't change, even when the sidewalk sloped or cracked. And he never passed me, no matter how slow I went. One evening I stopped abruptly and turned around fully. He stopped too. We stood there facing each other, separated by exactly 6 steps of pavement. The streetlight above him buzzed faintly, bathing his face in a dull amber glow. His features were familiar. Not in a way I could place, not someone I knew, but the proportions were wrong in a way that tugged at memory, like a face recalled from a dream just before waking. He opened his mouth. No sound came out. Then he closed it again. I turned and walked home. He followed. The sense of being watched didn't leave when I reached my building. As I unlocked my door, I felt it settle behind my eyes, as if the act of being observed had seeped inside me. I locked the door, checked it twice, stood in the quiet apartment, listening to my own breathing. That night, I stood at the window and watched the street. He never appeared, but I knew he was there, waiting for me to move again. The following week, I stopped trying to avoid him. There was a strange comfort in the predictability, in knowing exactly when the footsteps would begin, in knowing they would never rush, never touch, never close the distance. It felt like being watched by something with rules. Then, one night, I missed my usual train. I left work 20 minutes late. The sky was darker, the street quieter, the air thick with the promise of rain. 3 minutes passed, no footsteps. 4, 5. I felt an unexpected twist of unease, sharp, almost panicked. I slowed, then stopped completely, heart thudding in my ears. The street behind me was empty. For the first time in weeks, I was alone. I took a step forward. Footsteps resumed behind me immediately, closer than before. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The distance between us had shortened to 2 steps. I could hear the texture of his movement now, the soft shift of fabric, the controlled placement of weight. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was correcting something. When I stopped, he stopped. When I started, he matched me perfectly. Not behind me anymore. With me. At my building, I hesitated. The front door loomed ahead, glass reflecting my face back at me. For a moment, just a moment, I saw another shape in the reflection, standing where he always stood. I reached for the door. The footsteps did not follow. Instead, I heard them turn away, walking the rest of my route alone. I don't take that path anymore. I vary my schedule, change my streets, take taxis when I can. But sometimes when I walk at night and the city grows quiet, I hear footsteps fall into rhythm behind me. Careful, patient, as if something is making sure I remember the way. And on nights when I stop walking altogether, when I stand still in the dark and listen, I swear I can hear someone breathing just behind my shoulder, waiting for me to continue.